very warm welcome to you all. Thank you again to Siga for inviting me, and it's wonderful to have the opportunity to meet and connect with so many of you virtually on this critical topic. So I'm Jane Purdon, as you know, and I'm the CEO of Women in Football. And at Women in Football, we support, champion, and celebrate every woman who works in the game or who wants to work in the game. And we welcome into our membership every man who supports our aims, and our male allies are critical to this work. So the topic of female leadership in sport is a critical one. And at Women in Football, I'm lucky enough to have something of a privileged view on what's going on in the world on this issue. We live in challenging times, but I am encouraged to see organisations like SIGA and others take initiatives such as this to really drive forward the momentum for change in sport. For Women in Football, we have about 4,500 members, and we've been talking to them closely over the past year or two, both about COVID-related issues and about the wider world as they see it. And this is what they're telling us. The first thing that they tell us is that the overwhelming majority of them have suffered discrimination in their careers on the grounds of gender. 66% of them tell us that loud and clear. They also tell us that they have faced obstacles in their career because of their gender. When we asked them what that discrimination consisted of, they told us that it consisted of what's known as banter and jokes, except those jokes aren't really funny, are they? They're just pointing out someone's difference, but it's done with a smile on its face, but it's not funny. And for the person on the receiving end of it, it can absolutely sap their energy. They told us that sometimes it was overt discrimination, which stopped them getting promotion and progressing in their careers. They told us that sometimes as women, it is assumed that they are there to tick a box, and that as women, what would they know about football? So their knowledge and their expertise in sport was underplayed and undervalued. We also know that over the past year, many of our members, like people across the world, have found COVID-related challenges very difficult. We know that with issues like homeschooling, the burden seems to have fallen more on women than on men. And when we asked them through the COVID period how it had been for them, the overwhelming loud voice coming from them was that they needed help. They needed help with their mental health. They needed support. They needed people to talk to. And this is our first lesson as women in sport and as men in sport who support greater female leadership in sport. We can all help each other. When we asked our members what's helped you most, many of them spoke of their inner determination to overcome obstacles. Many of them spoke of their love of sport, but mostly they spoke of the support that other people give them. Now, whether that support comes through mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, that's having a cup of coffee with a colleague sometimes. The support of others is critical, and that's how we all grow. So that's what women have told us that they have been feeling, but there was better news also. They told us that when they look to the future, they feel confident that they will be supported in their careers in football and in sport. They said that their employers support them. They said that their co-workers and colleagues support them. So what we are seeing here is a world that is changing, and a world of sport that is changing. There is an old sport, which those of us who've worked in it, as I have for 20 years, will recognise. And it wasn't always welcoming to women and other underrepresented groups. Now, if you were to say to me, where does sport stand on gender equality? and other questions of diversity and inclusion, I would say that it's changing. Sport knows that it needs to change. Much of sport wants to change, but it doesn't always know how. And again, this is where we can help each other. Now, that's a generalization, and there are still pockets of sport and areas of sport and individual organizations which are not as supportive of their women, of the underrepresented ethnic groups who work for them, people who have other characteristics which put them into a so-called minority, as they should be. And until that changes, it's important that the work of my organisation, for example, and other organisations in the field, and initiatives by SIGA, such as this one, thrive. As we look forward, we have got lots of sporting events to look forward to, and sport will come back. Live sport will come back. Many of you will have shared with me the incredible momentum built up in women's sports across many of the mega competitions that take place in normal times, be it the Olympic Games or the fantastic Women's World Cup in France in the summer of 2019. These all created such a momentum. And in the early days of COVID, I was so worried that this momentum that had built up around women in sport was going to be lost. Well, I have to tell you, from everything I have seen and heard over the past 4 to 5 months, I don't think it is. I think that the key actors and players in women's sport, be it international governing bodies, be it governments, be it national governing bodies, realise that women's sport is one of the most untapped areas of potential for the growth of sport. And I've been very encouraged to hear their commitment to it. So I'm going to make a confident prediction that after COVID, it will come roaring back. We will again enjoy our wonderful female athletes at the Olympic Games. Speaking from the UK, I'm looking forward to the Commonwealth Games in 2022, and of course the Women's Euros, which will take place in England in 2022, and which I think will light the country up. From governments, I think we'll see even greater impetus to keep populations fit and well, because as we've all seen, excess weight and poor heart and lung health can make COVID outcomes worse. So there are many reasons to be cheerful. However, it is important that as women's sport grows and develops, that side by side with that, women in the sport workforce take their full and rightful place as leaders, as experts. And what we cannot accept, and certainly we at Women in Football will never accept, is successful, triumphant, wonderful women's sport that is led by men. We must also build our talent pipeline of female leaders in sport. And initiatives such as this Web Summit from SIGA are critical to that. Before COVID hit the world, we'd seen so many exciting developments in women's sport. Our female athletes from around the world had triumphed at Olympic Games. We'd enjoyed an incredible, most successful ever Women's World Cup in football in France in the summer of 2019. Now, if you're like me, when COVID first hit, you were probably extremely worried that the extraordinary momentum that had been built up around women's sport would come to an end. As we all know, it was still in its growth and investment phase. Women's sport doesn't and didn't pre-COVID yet wash its face, break even, pay for itself. It was still reliant on subsidy and investment, be that from men's sport, be it from governments, be it from enlightened commercial investors. I was certainly very worried about this and wondering if the gains that had been made would all come to a grinding halt. Well, the good news is from everything I am seeing and hearing and feeling now and over the past few months, I think it's going to come roaring back. There is commitment from international governing bodies, from national governing bodies, from governments. We will see an Olympic Games. Next year in 2022 in the UK, my country, we will see the Commonwealth Games and an event which I think will really set the country alight, the Women's Euros in football. I'm hearing real commitment from commercial partners with new deals being talked of and announced. I'm hearing commitment from governments. So governments will be keen to ensure that public health is as good as possible. And as part of this, they will want to encourage girls and women to participate in sport. Women's sport remains the area of sport with the most untapped potential. And what's truly exciting about it is that nobody knows how big this thing is going to be. But I'm going to sit here and confidently predict it's going to be big. But what we mustn't allow to happen when women's sport comes roaring back is a situation where, yes, we watch our wonderful athletes at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. We watch our wonderful women footballers, the European Championships, and further ahead at the World Cup in New Zealand and Australia in 2023. And yet, for women's sport to be led by men. And for this reason, it's vital that the talent pipeline of women leaders of the future is developed and that women are encouraged and allowed and helped to play their full part in leading sport for all. And not just in women's sport. Many women here at this summit this week, like myself, have built their careers in essentially men's sport. Sport is for all of us. It is a human right. And I will go further and say not just playing sport is a human right, but having the ability to work in sport and reach your full potential and truly flourish, that also is a human right. So I wish you all a very successful summit. I look forward to meeting some of you online and hopefully before the year is out, we may even meet in person.